Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire, was in Minnesota, of course, for Super Bowl 52. And we will get his colorful take of that night and some of the great moments from it. Turron, welcome back, pal. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing really well. I tell you what, I'll be better if your buddy that reserved the room in October could give me the Powerball numbers.
Well, they were off to a great start, and he said, look, if something happens, I got to make sure that I got myself a spot there. But that place, I mean, it's going to be bedlam tomorrow. The players, I know today was a media availability for the players. Like, are they, giddy about this?
They really are, man. They are so excited about tomorrow. I talked to a bunch of them, and they say, man, I know it's going to be crazy, and they just are looking forward to it. They can't wait to be able to share the experience with the fans. A lot of the guys said that they've already met people, you know, in the street or anywhere that they go that have come up to them and literally been in tears thanking them. So it's just they understand the magnitude of what is going on here in this city and how really the spirits of 5 million people have just been uplifted, and they can't wait to be able to really experience the whole thing of being able to have a Super Bowl party here in the city of Philadelphia.
Turron, I was at the Sixers game last night. I mean, every time Washington went to the free throw line, it was an Eagles chant. When the Eagles came out to ring the bell, it was bedlam in that place. I mean, it's almost as if everything is like at a standstill and everyone's still in like this hungover fog of excitement and enjoyment. But Doug Peterson, I thought today, was excellent in recapping and really, you know, putting a bow on this season. I know the parade will put the bow, but it was his last time to really speak in a formal setting yesterday in that, you know, he said, look, if I take every speaking engagement, that means I'm not getting ready to win the next one. And I thought he really showed why the Eagles are Super Bowl champions with the way he answered questions today.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the thing that I love that he said is he told players to get used to it. This is the new norm in Philadelphia. The expectation is to be playing into February, and that's just a great message that you could have for the guys and leave them with. I know a lot of them have a lot of new opportunities, you know, engagements going on, you know, shooting to New York, shooting to D.C. for stuff, and he just told them to make sure they keep things in perspective, and that's a good point, you know, the focus, because it's not about winning one Super Bowl. It's about creating the dynasty, and that's what Alshon Jeffrey talked about, you know, at the media week. He talked about that, and that's what they're looking to do, and that mindset that Doug Peterson has instilled in them is exactly what will make that happen.
Turron, when you look back at this season, I mean, this whole 2017 season from OTAs, training camp, the regular season, etc. Can you? I was doing this with a buddy the other day. Can you just pick out 3 moments that were just like the highest, the lowest, and the still belief that this team could still get to where they ultimately did in that Super Bowl champions?
Yeah, the first moment that pops out to me was the first touchdown of the season, and I think that touchdown where Carson Wentz was able to extend the play, Nelson turned up, and Wentz found him, a 51-yard touchdown. And that one just kind of set the tone to me and just showed me, like, you know what, this team is going to really be a problem this year. So that one. Then from there, it was the 61-yard field goal by Jake Elliott. And then after that, I would say, and no one would point to this, but I would say that 3rd and 8, where Nick Foles had taken over, that 3rd and 8, and they needed to get that first down in order to be able to bleed the clock. And Nick Foles hit Nelson Aguilar. That's when I said, you know what, this team has a lot with them, and they're going to be a threat to go far in the playoffs.
You hear a lot of national pundits, you know, coming out of the woodwork and saying, listen, you know, Philadelphia was the team of destiny this year. You know, it was all set up for them, you know, to have that moment. But in my opinion, this team is built for the long haul in a lot of the important places that you need to have a great football team for a long time. Do you feel the same, that this team is not going away for a while?
I don't see this team going anywhere. Offensive line-wise, I mean, just in the trenches, period. You know, I was talking with a friend earlier, and you look at the defensive line. Look at the first-round picks and how many guys are secured there for years to come. That defensive line is in excellent shape, and that's the whole foundation of the defense. But then you look on the flip side, the offensive line. I mean, you got guys there that are the top of their position. You know, there's no better right tackle than Lane Johnson. I don't feel there's a better guard in the game than Brandon Brooks. And Wisniewski is an outstanding player. I don't think there's a better center than Jason Kelsey. And, you know, we'll see how the left tackle situation works out. But they are deep there also. So you look at that, and then you look at how many players they have in tow to come back, whether it be Jordan Hicks, Chris Marico's the team's guy. I mean, they played without a lot of guys. And how can we forget Carson Wentz? So they're in good shape for years to come. Alshon Jeffrey secured. Zach Ertz is secured. And Doug Peterson's in place. So they're going to be a legit contender. And I would definitely pencil them in as the team to beat next year. And I won't be surprised in the least if they're playing in Atlanta next year at this point.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire. He's covered the Eagles the last couple of years, been around this team. We had Jason Avant on last hour. He was excellent with some of the insight he gave us for playing with Doug. And one of the things that he said was that, he puts the players in position. Like, the perfect example he said was, look at what he did with Aguilar. He said, look, he knew this guy had talent, but he moves him inside so that he's matched up with 5th and 6th round guys instead of being on the outside and having to fight his way. But, a lot of coaches, because of where you're drafted, they're going to put you in a spot where maybe you don't belong, and that's what makes Doug, different from coaches that he's played for in the past that maybe didn't play the game, was that he is willing to put you in spots where he thinks that you can excel, as opposed to putting you where people think you belong based on your draft position.
Yeah, it's an unconventional way of thinking, and that's the great thing about Peterson, and it's the confidence. I think that's the main thing, the confidence and communication that he has with the players. As a matter of fact, I asked him what it is that really allows him to relate to the players and get them right, and that's what he told me, the communication. So guys know where they stand. Going into a game, they know, LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi, Corey Clement, they know, okay, well, you know what? It's going to be about the hot hand. I may not get as many carries, but you know what? If I go ahead and I ball out, it's going to come back to me. And that's because of the communication that Peterson and the coaching staff, have with the players. And it's a great point about Nelson Aguilar. The confidence, I think that's really the key, the confidence that this coaching staff is able to instill in these guys. I mean, when you have a guy that you have a package of plays for, and he knows that you've taken the time to put together a package of plays for him, that's going to instill confidence in him. Obviously, coming in, they already have confidence, but when you know that you're a focal point, that makes you even more confident. So that's a great point by Jason Avant, and I think when you just look at overall the way that he calls a game, that also instills confidence. That's something that Jay Ajayi told me. That's something that Zach Ertz told me last week. Just the way he's willing to go for it on fourth down, the way that he's willing to put plays together to trust various players. I mean, that was the talk of the locker room today, just how you had a guy who was undrafted free agent as a tight end, accepting a handoff from a guy who was an undrafted free agent at running back, lined up, in shotgun, throwing to a guy who was, beginning of this year, the backup quarterback in the biggest game of the year on 4th and goal. That just goes to show you how much confidence he has in his players, and they appreciate that.
Yeah, and one of his quotes today, he said, my whole mentality, the reason I got into this business is just to win. I don't care who gets the credit. It's what I did in high school, and it's what I hope to continue to do here. Well, that was Doug today, basically saying, I don't need you to tell me that I'm the best or who's the best or who did anything. I do this to win, and I thought that was something that really personifies this group here. And you just talked about it. You got undrafted guys on the field on 4th down and 1, and one of the things we asked Avant was, when you call a play like that, he said, yeah, guys look at each other in the huddle, like they're excited, like, man, this play's probably been in our back pocket all year. We're finally getting a chance to run it. But to call it with that personnel on the field, he said that's what really separated Doug to him as a risk taker, that the personnel out there didn't give away anything because they were so, guys that you would not envision being out there at that time.
Yeah, Clement, he said that when the play call came, he laughed at it. That's undrafted free agent rookie in that situation, laughing right? That just tells you the confidence and the calmness that a player like that has. And I think that's something that has to be pointed out. And, yeah, I mean, what more can you say about Doug Peterson calling that play in that situation? And even, the execution, Clement said that he had to do his best to look like he was confused when Foles went up and to talk to Lane Johnson like as if he was changing the play. And he just had to sell it. And it's funny. He said, man, once I passed it off to Trey Burton, that was his issue, and I was done with it. So he was relieved once, that happened, and was confident that Burton was going to get the ball to Foles, and look what happened.
Turron, nobody wants to talk about it, but the NFL does go on, and decisions have to be made. But I'm not even talking about the quarterbacks. What about the running backs? LeGarrette Blount's going to be a free agent. Jay Ajayi, you know he's going to want more touches. He got traded here this season. Corey Clement has played a big role. Darren Sproles coming back. I mean, how many of these guys realistically are going to be back? And I didn't even talk about Wendell Smallwood.
Yeah, and Sproles is actually going to be a free agent, so who knows what happens there. And you got Donnell Pumphrey coming off of injury, and I tell you, you talk about a package of plays. He's a guy they had all kinds of aspirations for as far as being a part of that passing game and occasionally running the ball. So we'll see what happens there. I'm going to say something that's not really popular, but it's my viewpoint, and I think they need to draft a running back. I think they need to look at doing that early also.
Really?
This is a team, they're going to have to find other ways to win. And one of the ways that they haven't really won that will really help them is getting a more explosive player at running back. Now, don't get me wrong, Jay Ajayi has been decent for them, getting those short yards. There are some plays where he broke long runs, but they should have been touchdowns. And let's be honest about it. When they run that outside zone of stretch plays, Ajayi's not touched until a good 10 to 15 yards down the field.
Yeah.
And half the time, it's a defender from the second level, whether it be a linebacker on the other side or, in the secondary, a safety running him down. Ronald Jones out of USC, he needs to be the pick. And he will give them that explosiveness, that home run hitter that will allow them to run that outside zone and score it for 90 yards.
Wow,
and I think that will give them another element to their offense.
Obviously the Foles thing is interesting. We asked Avon about that because he was here in 2006 with Garcia, and he said flat out there were guys in the locker room that were mad that they let Jeff walk because of what he did for that team in 2006 and that it led to a divide. But the front office felt that they could not bring Garcia back because the fans would be clamoring for him in the event that McNabb struggled. Do you see a situation like that potentially happening here? Because he said what he thinks they should do is sit him down in a room and ask him 3 or 4 teams he'd be willing to go play for and go let him play someplace else so that he doesn't have to be standing there when people are kind of clamoring for him in the event that something went wrong with Carson. I thought that was really interesting because of the whole Garcia thing. But what is the way you envision this offseason going with that position?
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I want to say this, though. There's a disconnect between Donovan McNabb and Philadelphia, and there will always be. And there never really was that real bond between McNabb and the city. Carson Wentz, you have grown men I'm not talking about now after they won the Super Bowl. I'm talking about in training camp. Grown men would meet him and start crying. Carson Wentz is the Pope to a lot of these people. So I don't think any way whatsoever, any type of struggle, I can't see people calling for Nick Foles in the event that Carson Wentz should not play as well as he's capable of. So I don't think that's an issue. I do understand where Yvonne's coming from, and he's right. Under normal circumstances, you don't want a guy to have to constantly look over his shoulder and put someone in that bad situation. But they have a perfect storm in that they have a guy that if Wentz doesn't come back in time, they have a guy who could play and will play well, and they have a guy who won't cause any type of problems if Carson Wentz when Carson Wentz takes over. Mm-hmm. I think that's a big-time thing. It's going to be interesting because I would definitely sit down with Nick and just ask him straight up, okay, our situation. what do you want to do? I think he's earned that, and that's what they'll probably do. What do you want to do? Do you want to continue to be, a part of this team, or do you want to go somewhere else and to build upon your legacy?
How much do you
based
think,
off of that,
Turron, how much do you think, like I would assume when they traded Jordan, that they got with the coaches and said, do you guys believe that Aguilar can handle more of a role? Yes. Okay. Then I feel better moving Jordan. Like, similar situation with Sudfeld. Like, guys, do you believe that Sudfeld could keep us afloat in the event that Carson's not ready or missed a handful of games? And if you do, give me the green light, because then I can start to make calls. If not, we'll keep Nick here.
Oh, for sure. I think, what they are confident in as far as a depth standpoint is going to be crucial for sure. So that's something else that factors in. And if they feel that Sudfeld is the guy that could back up, don't be surprised if they draft another quarterback. I think a guy like Mike White out of Western Kentucky would be good in this system. So, I mean, there's things that you could do to kind of offset that loss, but I don't think it's a good decision with Carson coming off of such a big-time injury. I don't think it's a good decision to put all of your apples in that one cart with him.
Turron, you just mentioned something that I believe is the story. What does Nick Foles really want to do? Because he knows the situation here. But then again, you just referenced something about the organization, and they have to cover themselves. I mean, do you just have a conversation with Nick like, hey, we know that you just had this incredible run. Do you want to be a starter somewhere? And if Nick does say he does want to be a starter, do you owe it to him to give him that opportunity, even though it might not be best for your organization?
I think you kind of sit on the fence with that. He deserves the conversation. You have the conversation. If he decides that he wants to be the starter, you start shopping him. And if you can't get back the value that you feel is absolutely necessary for a guy like Nick Foles, then you keep him. Because the good thing is he's not going to complain. That's the ultimate chess piece that they have, knowing he won't complain. So yeah, they could try to appease his desires. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Fill his desires, but hey, they have to at the end of the day think about the organization.
Yeah.
Nick Foles, as mature as he is, he understands that, but also his perspective, right? He's a newfound family man. He has a brand new daughter. He loves his dog and obviously his wife. So those are the things, and his faith too. We can't forget that. So those are the things that will, always take higher precedence with him. And that's why you won't see the guy cause a big time scene. It's not in his demeanor to do that.
Yeah, and I don't think people think that Foles would be I think it may be more from the fan base of if things went kind of awry. But that's neither here nor there with that one. Let's look at just a couple other interesting ones, like Patrick Robinson. Like, nobody thought this guy was even going to make that. I mean, some people thought he wasn't going to make the team, let alone the role that he has. But you got Sidney Jones sitting there. You got Rasul Douglas, whose play time got cut into. So they got some really key players in this run that they got some really tough decisions on.
Yeah, I don't know for sure that Robinson will be back. He did give him outstanding play in the slot, covering the slot receivers. But I tell you, if you watch Sidney Jones, there's a reason why I felt Sidney Jones was the best corner in this past draft class, including Marshawn Lattimore, who was outstanding. But Sidney is a guy you could bump him inside. He'll cover those guys like the Amendolas, those guys like a man down there in Dallas. I almost said Travis McGriff. I'm thinking about the Florida Gators. But, he'll cover those type of guys. So I think there's depth there. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring Patrick Robinson back. I mean, there's tough decisions to make, but, that's one of them I could see making.
Turron Davenport, USA Today, Eagles Wire, of course, all season long with us here on the Sports Bash, and we appreciate him always jumping on board here at @TDavenport_NFL. He's a member of the Pro Football Writers Association as well. You can check him out on Twitter at Turron Davenport. Thanks, pal.
Thanks, Turron. Great work this year.
No problem. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been a blast.